All right, so today we're going deep, like really deep, into something I think everyone can relate to, personal growth.
Yeah, it's one of those things, right? Everyone wants it, but figuring out what it actually looks like for you, that's the tricky part.
Totally. And what's really interesting is that for this deep dive, the sources you sent over, they kind of all touch on this idea of trusting yourself,
Mhm.
trusting your journey,
Mhm.
making choices that, down the road you can look back on and be like, yeah, good call.
It is fascinating, isn't it, how these different sources, they all seem to point to this idea that personal growth, it's not like a recipe. It's not a one size fits all
But
thing.
typically,
It's about you. It's about finding what works for you, going at your own pace, and honestly recognizing that you're going to stumble sometimes. Like setbacks, they're just part of the deal.
yeah, 100%. And there's this one quote that really stuck with me. It said, everyone has their own life rhythm. And I feel like that's so easy to forget sometimes.
It is.
We get caught up comparing ourselves to everyone else, but it's, like you said, comparing apples and oranges.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a comparison game you can't win. You're always going to find someone who's seemingly ahead of you or doing things differently. And it just ends up making you feel, I don't know, inadequate or like you're not doing enough.
Yeah.
But imagine, just imagine, if we flipped that script. What if instead of comparing, we celebrated? Celebrated our own progress, our own wins, no matter how small, acknowledged how far we've already come. Like that shift in perspective, it can change everything.
I love that. Shifting from comparison to celebration. Okay, so another big theme that came up in these sources is action, like actually doing stuff, not just talking about it.
Oh, yeah, it's about walking the walk, not
Yeah,
just talking the talk. Proving yourself through what you do, not just what you say. Like less talk, more action.
exactly. And there's this really powerful line that says, don't grow old without knowing your life's desires. It's like a call to action, right?
It is. It's a call to get out there, to explore, to experiment, even if you're not sure what you'll find or if you'll succeed. Like, think about it. Have you ever been hesitant to try something new? Maybe you were scared of failing or you just didn't think you were good enough.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Right. But what if you had taken that leap anyway? You might have surprised yourself. And even if you didn't get the outcome you hoped for, you would have gained experience. You would have learned something new about yourself.
That's so true. And looking back, the times I regret the most, they're usually the times I let fear win, the times I didn't take that leap. So, like, how do we actually put this into practice? It's easy to say take action, but where do we even begin?
Well, I think one of the best things you can do is break things down. Take that big, scary goal, whatever it is,
Hmm.
and break it down into smaller steps, manageable steps.
Okay. Yeah.
It's all about momentum, right?
Yeah.
Building consistency. Like, let's
Yeah.
say you want to write a book. That's a huge goal.
Huge. Yeah.
But instead of getting overwhelmed by the whole thing, what if you committed to just writing one page a day? One page. It might not seem like much, but those small, consistent actions, they add up. Eventually, you'll have a whole book.
That's a really good point. It's like that saying, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Exactly. Okay, now speaking of making choices that align with our goals, let's talk about this idea of choosing a path, like in life, that our future selves won't regret. It all comes back to being true to ourselves, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Like knowing who you are, what you want, and not being afraid to go after it.
Right. And making choices that reflect those things, your values, your long term goals, even when those choices are hard. It's about imagining yourself years down the line, 10, 20 years from now, and asking yourself, what kind of life do I want to be living? What decisions can I make today to move me closer to that? It's about aligning your actions with your aspirations and being willing to adjust course along the way because things change?
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of people listening can probably relate to that feeling of being at a crossroads, not knowing which path to take. Like what really stood out to you from these sources about navigating those tough decisions?
One thing that really resonated with me was this idea that even if things don't turn out exactly as planned, even if you make mistakes, knowing that you put in your best effort, that you stayed true to yourself, that can make all the difference. It minimizes regret.
I see. Yeah.
It's about focusing on the process, not just the outcome, accepting that there will be challenges, setbacks, but those are opportunities for growth, for learning.
That's a really good point. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about relationships. There's this interesting concept that came up in the sources, this idea that the people who are meant to be in our lives, they'll stay. And those who aren't, they'll naturally drift away. It's almost like the universe is doing some filtering for us.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a fascinating perspective. It's not to say that we should just sit back and let things happen, but it does make you think about the importance of surrounding yourself with the right people, people who support your growth, who inspire you to be better.
Yeah.
And on the other side of that coin, it's recognizing that sometimes walking away from a relationship, even if it's hard, it might be the healthiest thing you can do for yourself.
Absolutely. Sometimes letting go is actually the kindest thing you can do for yourself and even for the other person. And, that kind of ties into this idea of being okay with being alone, with solitude. Like, we're often told that we need a partner to be happy, but these sources, they challenge that.
They do. They really emphasize the importance of finding happiness within yourself, whether you're in a relationship or not. It's about being content with who you are on your own. Yeah. And recognizing that your worth doesn't depend on having a romantic partner.
Yeah, I love that. So much pressure is put on finding the one, but you can be a whole person without being part of a couple.
Absolutely. It's about choosing to be in relationships because they enrich your life, not because you feel like you need them to be complete.
Okay, and along those same lines, these sources talk about the fact that both the good and the bad, they're temporary. One quote said, even bad things are just bad, but they will pass one day.
Mhm.
And I think that's such a powerful reminder, especially when you're going through a tough time.
It is. It's so easy to get caught up in the moment, to feel like the pain or the sadness will never end. But it will. Life is full of ups and downs, and no one escapes the hard stuff. But it does pass.
Right.
And you know what? Often, those challenges, even the really tough ones, they leave us with lessons, with experiences we can share with others. Like, there's this other quote from the sources that says, pain and sorrow may be temporary, but lessons and experiences always remain and can be shared. It's like, find the meaning in the struggle. Let it shape you, but don't let it break you.
Wow, this has been honestly such an amazing conversation. We've covered so much: embracing your own pace, taking action, making choices you can stand by, and figuring out the whole relationship thing. It's a lot to think about.
It is.
So as we wrap up, I want to leave everyone listening with a question to ponder. If you could go back, talk to your younger self, what's the one piece of advice you'd give them based on everything we've talked about today?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'd say to take some time to really think about that. What wisdom would have helped you on your journey? And how can you use that wisdom now?
Awesome. Thanks for being here today. This is a really good deep dive.
Thanks for having me. I always enjoy these conversations.